The Zhar'Vesh fleet hovered above Earth like a dark omen, the array of ships spreading out across the sky in an unbroken line that blotted out the sun. The moment had arrived. The planet's cities lay in ruins, their people shattered, but the Zhar'Vesh were not here to conquer, they had already done that. They were here to remind the humans of their place. To maintain control, one needed only fear. Fear was their weapon, and fear had always been enough. In the command center of the flagship Vorka, Commander Coulter stood stoically, watching Earth through the viewports. His many eyes, cold and calculating, surveyed the scene of devastation below. His expression was unreadable, as it always was. To show emotion was to show weakness, and weakness had no place in the Zhar'Vesh Empire. "Commander," a low voice broke through his thoughts. A Zhar'Vesh officer, pale and gaunt, appeared at his side. "The Queen's orders are clear. The execution is set to proceed. The human girl, Alira, is ready." Coulter's gaze flickered toward the officer, though his posture remained rigid. "Do you question the Queen's orders, Lieutenant?" he asked, the coldness of his voice sending a shiver through the officer. "No, Commander." "Of course not," the officer stammered, eyes lowered in submission. Coulter's sharp gaze returned to the view of Earth. Alira. The name echoed in his mind, a sharp contradiction in a world that had long known nothing but brutality. She was just a child, one of the last remnants of an ancient human village that had resisted their occupation. Her family had been slaughtered in the early stages of the invasion. And yet, there was something about her that made her different. Unbroken. Defiant. He exhaled slowly, his many limbs twitching in agitation. The Queen's order was simple: Alira's death would be a symbolic gesture, the final crushing blow to human resistance. Yet Coulter could not shake the feeling that something more was at play. Alira was dragged into the central chamber, her small body shackled and bruised. Her eyes, however, blazed with something Coulter could not quite name. Fear? No, not fear, there was no fear in her. There was fire, raw and unyielding. It was as though she stood in defiance of the universe itself. "Do you understand what will happen to you?" Coulter's voice echoed off the cold stone walls, though his words were not directed at her. Alira lifted her chin, meeting his gaze with an intensity that made Coulter falter. "You may kill me," she said quietly, her voice steady despite her restraints, "but you cannot kill the truth. The truth of who we are." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Coulter's chest tightened, a faint warmth pooling in his center. It was a strange sensation, one he had not felt since he was a fledgling soldier, fresh from the training camps and eager to prove his worth. "Enough!" The voice of Queen Nerevka, the Zhar'Vesh monarch, rang through the chamber, her command unmistakable. Her form emerged from the shadows, her alien features sleek and serpentine. She was the epitome of cold, ruthless power. Coulter stepped aside, bowing his head slightly in respect, though his gaze never left Alira. The Queen walked toward the center of the room, where Alira stood bound, her back straight, her eyes unwavering. "You are the last of your kind, little one. A symbol of your people's futile resistance. Today, I will ensure your people understand just how insignificant they are," she purred, her voice dripping with venom. Coulter watched, his mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. The Queen's orders were clear, but something about Alira's presence unsettled him. She wasn't like the others. There was something dangerous about her. With a swift motion, Nerevka raised her hand. The room filled with an oppressive silence as the execution was prepared. Coulter moved to the side, unable to tear his eyes away. His instincts, honed over countless battles, screamed at him to act. But duty to the Empire weighed heavily on his shoulders. To defy the Queen now was to invite chaos, and he would never survive that. The Queen's fingers curled, and a beam of energy erupted from her hand, aimed directly at Alira's chest. But as the beam struck, something unimaginable happened. A surge of energy exploded outward, rippling through the chamber in every direction. The air crackled with raw power, as though the very fabric of reality had been torn open. Coulter staggered back, his body reeling from the force. The other Zhar'Vesh officers scrambled to maintain their footing, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. Alira's body was still, her eyes closed, but she was not dead. Something had changed. As the energy continued to pulse in the room, Coulter felt a sense of unease settle deep within him. The Queen's eyes narrowed in suspicion, but Coulter could not tear his gaze away from the girl. In that moment, he realized, Alira was not just a symbol of humanity's resistance. She was the key. The catalyst for something greater. And it terrified him. "Commander," the officer's voice was shaky as he spoke. "What should we do?" Coulter didn't answer. His mind raced as the power around Alira continued to grow. The room was charged with an energy that was far beyond anything they had ever encountered. The humans were no longer helpless. And the Zhar'Vesh Empire was about to learn the true cost of underestimating them. The Zhar'Vesh fleet hung like a living nightmare in Earth's orbit, its massive ships scattered across the sky in a formation of controlled chaos. The power of the Empire had always been undeniable, until now. Below, the humans were no longer the broken, fragmented resistance they once were. The energy pulse from Alira's near execution had unleashed something ancient, something primal, deep within the planet's very core. But the Zhar'Vesh were slow to grasp the true magnitude of what had just occurred. Commander Coulter paced in the cold, sterile corridors of the flagship Vorka. The aftershocks of the explosion still vibrated through the ship, and the uneasy tension in the air was palpable. His mind raced, caught between the echoes of that energy burst and the haunting image of Alira's unflinching gaze. He paused at the command center, his form casting a long shadow against the glowing consoles. "Report," Coulter barked, his voice cold but strained with something he couldn't yet name. The lieutenant, a young and nervous officer, snapped to attention. "Commander, the fleet is experiencing irregularities. Weapons systems are malfunctioning, communications are unstable, and power surges are occurring across multiple ships." Coulter's eyes narrowed. "These are no malfunctions. This is something else." He turned to the viewport, his gaze fixed on Earth below. For the first time, he found himself questioning everything: their dominance, the invincibility of the Zhar'Vesh, the very nature of their empire. "There's more at work here than we understand," Coulter muttered to himself, just loud enough for the lieutenant to hear. The officer hesitated. "But, Commander, what about Alira? She's the source, isn't she? We should eliminate her before." Coulter's hand shot out, cutting the officer off. "No. Do not speak of her as if she is an object. She is the key to something far beyond our grasp. Below on Earth, in a hidden resistance base beneath the ruins of a forgotten city, the pulse from Alira's near-death reverberated throughout the planet. The resistance fighters, once demoralized, now found themselves bathed in an energy they could neither comprehend nor fully control. "Look at this," a voice called out from the lab, its excitement tangible. Sergeant Kyla, a hardened survivor and once a scientist, stood hunched over a holographic display, her hands trembling as she scanned the readings. Captain Roderick, her longtime comrade, stepped up beside her. "What's happening?" I don't know," she replied, shaking her head in disbelief. "The energy signatures are off the charts. It's like the Earth itself is reacting to her death, except, she's not dead. And the longer she's alive, the stronger it gets. Look at these fluctuations." She pointed to the hologram as waves of radiant light pulsed across the screen. Roderick frowned. She was supposed to be a symbol, a martyr. How is she doing this? Kyla's expression was grim. "I don't know. But she's not just a symbol anymore. She's something far more powerful. Whatever this energy is, it's changing everything." At that moment, a crackling voice came over the radio. "Captain, we're picking up strange readings across the resistance camps. It's happening everywhere. There's a surge in power. People are reporting visions, abilities, things they've never experienced before." Roderick's eyes widened, as if the full weight of their situation was just beginning to sink in. The Empire's arrogance has unleashed something they can't control. Kyla nodded, her face pale. "And it's growing stronger. We need to find Alira, now. Back aboard the Vorka, Coulter could feel the energy shifting again. The ship groaned under the pressure, its systems struggling to adapt to the alien force pulsing through the air. His sharp, multifaceted eyes scanned the data streams rapidly, the information feeding into his mind in a complex, disjointed cascade. The lieutenant, visibly shaken, spoke again. "Commander, we've identified irregularities in the atmosphere. Unexplained energy fields are expanding. They're centered around Earth, but not just Earth anymore. They're spreading." Coulter's fists clenched. "Where are the human forces?" "They've already begun to mobilize, Commander. It's as if they're synchronized with the energy. The resistance, they're stronger than before." The realization hit Coulter like a blow to the chest. Alira's defiance had sparked something greater, a power that was awakening in every human. The once feeble survivors now had an energy that could rival their oppressors. "No," Coulter whispered, his voice cold and unyielding. "This is not possible." He had heard the whispers among the other Zhar'Vesh soldiers, the rumors of human resilience, of their hidden potential. But this was something beyond even the most deluded of beliefs. Something that defied the natural order of the universe. The officer spoke again, his voice faltering. "Commander, there's a message from the Queen." Coulter nodded and activated the holographic communicator. A tall, slender figure materialized, a regal form, draped in shimmering robes, her cold eyes sharp with the weight of authority. It was Queen Zhar'Vesh. "Coulter," she said, her voice a soft, dangerous whisper. "I trust you understand the gravity of the situation. These humans, whatever power they now possess, must be eradicated. Do not fail me." Her gaze bore into Coulter's, as if to probe his very soul. For a fleeting moment, Coulter hesitated. The weight of his duty pressed down on him, but so did the truth of what he had witnessed. The power of humanity had awakened, and the Zhar'Vesh Empire was no longer the dominant force in this war. "I understand, Your Majesty," Coulter replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside him. "I will not fail." But even as the words left his mouth, Coulter knew something had shifted. The power of the Zhar'Vesh was slipping, and the humans, against all odds, were rising. The sky above Earth seemed to thrum with unnatural energy as the resistance forces mobilized. The once feeble humans, now inexplicably empowered, took to the streets, the air charged with the pulse of something greater than them. Cities that had once fallen to ruin stirred with new life. People, who only days ago had been on the brink of collapse, now moved with purpose and unity, as if the earth itself had whispered a command to them. In the heart of this change, Alira stood, her bare feet planted firmly on the cracked soil. Her eyes were closed, but she felt the power surging through her veins like wildfire. It was a deep, primal force that made her pulse with raw energy, a connection to the earth, to the very essence of the resistance. She could feel every heartbeat, every movement of the wind, every tremor beneath the ground. Her thoughts had become a whirlwind of sensation, of understanding, of knowledge that was not hers, but that had somehow become a part of her. "It's not just me," she thought, opening her eyes. "It's everyone. Everyone who's still alive." She breathed in the air, which now seemed thicker, richer with the new energy. Her senses were sharper. Her mind, clearer. The world had changed. And Alira knew she was not alone in this. The resistance had already felt the shift. Far above, aboard the Vorka, Commander Coulter stared out over the shattered remnants of Earth, his face drawn and tense. The Zhar'Vesh fleet remained in orbit, their once imposing superiority now being eroded with every passing moment. He could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the strange, crackling energy that clung to the air like static electricity. "We've lost control of the power grids on several of the ships," reported one of the officers, his voice strained. "Energy levels are fluctuating unpredictably." Coulter didn't respond immediately, his thoughts churning. Alira. She had ignited this, whatever this was. And the implications were staggering. "Commander," the officer continued, "our forces are struggling to maintain order. The humans have grown bolder, almost coordinated. They are beginning to fight back in ways we've never seen. The words stung more than Coulter cared to admit. The Zhar'Vesh were an empire forged in conquest and brutality. The idea that humans, an inferior species in their eyes, were now mounting a challenge was beyond comprehension. "What's the status of our ground forces?" Coulter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The officer hesitated. "The human resistance is spreading faster than we anticipated. They are gaining ground in several key locations." Coulter's fists clenched at his sides. The pressure inside him was building, as though the very weight of the fleet was resting on his shoulders. He had always prided himself on his strategic brilliance, but now, even that wasn't enough to quell the rising fear gnawing at him. "Prepare a strike force," Coulter ordered, his voice cold but commanding. "We will not let this rebellion grow any stronger." But as the officers scrambled to fulfill the order, Coulter's mind was elsewhere, on the ground below, where the humans were awakening to something far beyond mere survival. Something has changed. They're more than we thought. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Resistance's underground base, Sergeant Kyla and Captain Roderick stood over a holographic map of the planet, the figures of soldiers blinking across the display. They were making their move. The Resistance's forces were swelling, and with every passing hour, they seemed to grow stronger, more united. Kyla looked up, her face grim. "It's happening faster than we thought. They're not just resisting, they're adapting. They're tapping into something we can't explain." Roderick crossed his arms, his eyes narrowed in thought. "This isn't just the power of the Earth reacting to them. It's something else. Alira's energy, it's changing everything." Kyla nodded slowly, her mind racing. "I've been studying the energy signatures from her last encounter. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. It's not just kinetic force. She faltered, her fingers trembling as she traced the lines on the map. "It's like they're drawing power from the very fabric of reality itself." "The Zhar'Vesh can't comprehend it," Roderick said, his voice hard. "We may have the advantage, but we don't know how to control it. If we can't harness this power, we risk being overwhelmed. And the Empire will stop at nothing to crush us." Kyla's gaze flickered to a series of coordinates on the map, where reports were flooding in of Zhar'Vesh patrols moving closer. "They're preparing for something. We need to strike first, before they figure out how to adapt to this new power." Roderick's jaw tightened. "Then we hit them where it hurts. We can't wait for them to act. We need to take the fight to them." Kyla's eyes burned with resolve. "We'll take back Earth. Every last inch of it." Above, in the vast expanse of space, Coulter stood alone in the command center, the weight of his decisions pressing on him with every breath. His mind raced, calculating, strategizing, searching for a solution, any solution, that would restore the balance in his favor. But the realization gnawed at him: this was no longer a war between two species. This was a war between systems, the old ways of domination and the new, unpredictable power of humanity. The Zhar'Vesh had never faced an adversary like this, and it terrified him. "I've underestimated them," Coulter muttered under his breath. And now, it's too late. The universe had tilted. And with it, the course of the war. As the energy pulse from Earth surged again, both sides felt it, the Zhar'Vesh in their failing command centers, and the resistance in their hearts, each one of them more powerful than ever before. And deep in the heart of Earth, Alira's eyes flashed with an inner fire. The storm had only just begun. The Resistance's forces were ready. Earth's cities, once silent and abandoned, now brimming with life, had transformed into fortresses of hope. The pulse of the planet, once a low hum of dormant energy, had surged into a tidal wave of raw, untapped power. And at the heart of it all stood Alira, her every breath an echo of the Earth's will to resist. The Zhar'Vesh fleet, a terrifying array of advanced technology and ruthless firepower, loomed high above. But now, instead of reigning supreme, they seemed out of place, alien not just in form, but in spirit. Commander Coulter stood on the bridge of the Vorka, staring at the blue orb below, the last vestige of a world he thought he could crush. His empire had crumbled in the face of humanity's unexpected awakening. "What are you waiting for?" Coulter. The voice of Queen Nerevka crackled through the comms, sharp and biting. You are to be the one to bring Earth to its knees. Are you truly allowing these creatures to defeat us? Coulter's jaw tightened. I don't think we're dealing with creatures anymore, Your Majesty. This is something else. Nerevka's icy silence on the other end of the line was followed by a chilling command. Then end it. Now. Wipe them from existence. He could feel her words like a weight pressing on his chest. But Coulter had seen the reports, watched the transmissions. The humans were no longer a fractured rebellion. They had become something more. Something far more dangerous. Below, in the heart of the human stronghold, Captain Roderick paced back and forth in the command room. The air smelled of ozone and sweat, the scent of preparation and anticipation. The holographic map flickered with incoming data, human forces mobilizing, Zhar'Vesh patrols moving into key positions. The final battle was upon them, and the stakes had never been higher. I can feel them, Alira said, her voice low but steady, as she stood near the map, her hands tracing the air as though she could sense the very currents of energy flowing beneath the surface. The Zhar'Vesh are preparing to strike. They know they've lost control, but they're trying to retake it. They'll come for us with everything they have. Roderick looked at her, his gaze full of awe. And we're going to stop them? She nodded, her face set with determination. We don't have a choice. This is our world. And we're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for something bigger. For everything. Kyla, standing off to the side, her eyes focused on the control panels, interrupted with a cold, sharp tone. We've done all we can. The enemy is gathering above us, but our forces are ready. The Earth's energy will guide us. We need to strike now. The tension in the room was palpable. The finality of the decision hung like a cloud over them. Alira's power, which had once been something they couldn't comprehend, was now their greatest weapon. But it was also a risk. It was unpredictable. The same force that had brought them to this point could just as easily tear them apart. I'm ready, Alira said, stepping forward, her voice unwavering. Let's end this. The Zhar'Vesh forces descended upon the planet with all the fury of an ancient storm. Their ships darkened the skies, their weapons primed and ready. But as they moved into position, something changed. The energy in the air, no longer static, but alive, began to pulse stronger, more intensely. The Earth was pushing back, channeling the raw power of its people through Alira. Coulter watched the readings on his console with increasing alarm. What is happening? He hissed. These power surges. They're everywhere, the officer replied, his voice tight with fear. We've lost control of the fleet's systems. The energy fields are disrupting our weapons, our shields, everything. Coulter's heart pounded in his chest. Impossible. They're fighting back with nothing but energy. No weapons, no ships. How can they? He looked up at the viewport, his gaze fixed on the planet below. His thoughts raced, but they were clouded by the realization of just how far they had underestimated humanity. The Queen's voice came through the comms again, cold and forceful. Coulter, I gave you an order. Do not fail me. But before Coulter could respond, the ship jolted violently, knocking him to the floor. The walls hummed, and the stars outside seemed to swirl in strange patterns, like the fabric of reality itself was bending. A massive surge of energy swept through the fleet, knocking out their power systems and causing chaos aboard the ship. On the ground, the resistance forces advanced. The Earth itself seemed to protect them now, the air thick with raw, tangible power. As Alira stood at the heart of the battlefield, her arms raised high, a blinding light erupted from the ground beneath her. The Zhar'Vesh forces, tanks, mechs, soldiers, began to falter, their machines freezing, their weapons malfunctioning. The humans pressed forward, each strike guided by the new force pulsing through the Earth, their attacks fueled by a power they had never known. Alira felt the energy coursing through her, felt the Earth respond, felt the resistance grow stronger with every step they took. It wasn't just their willpower anymore, it was the planet's will, the energy of every person who had ever lived and fought for freedom. The final blow came as Alira's hands slammed together, unleashing a wave of raw power that cascaded over the Zhar'Vesh fleet. Ships disintegrated, their crews thrown into chaos. The once impenetrable war machines of the Zhar'Vesh were powerless against the force of nature and humanity united. In the aftermath, as the last of the Zhar'Vesh forces retreated into the depths of space, the humans stood victorious. The Earth, scarred but not broken, pulsed with life. And in the heart of it all stood Alira, who had awakened the force within them all, the force to fight, to resist, to endure. The planet had been their enemy, their conqueror. But now, it was their greatest ally. Roderick stood by Alira's side, his voice soft with awe. "We've won." Alira smiled faintly, her gaze lost in the horizon. "We've only just begun."